You think raising a child means you'll have a home filled with love and gratitude in your old age. You think family will protect you when life knocks you down. But sometimes, the people you'd give your last breath for are the ones who hold the knife. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and this is the story of how I learned that lesson the hard way. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching this from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. My house in Fairfield, Connecticut, had been my sanctuary for 3 decades. My husband Richard and I bought it when our son Jacob was 10. It had 6 bedrooms, a wide wraparound porch, and the kind of garden that made neighbors stop to take pictures in spring. After Richard passed, that home became my cage. 2 years ago, Jacob and his wife Tiffany moved in, insisting they wanted to help me adjust. But the truth became clear within months. I wasn't a mother to cherish. I was free childcare for their twins and unpaid staff for their social climbing lifestyle. Tiffany would smile sweetly when introducing me to her friends. This is Jacob's mom, Eleanor. She lives with us, as if this were their home and I were some dependent relative they had graciously taken in. She never mentioned that the deed was in my name, and that this was the house Richard and I built together with our own sweat and sacrifice. Jacob wasn't much better. He treated me like part of the furniture, only noticed when he needed something. "Mom, could you tidy up before tonight?" he'd say, scrolling his phone. "I've got partners coming over, and the place needs to look perfect." Perfect, as if it weren't already spotless because I cleaned it daily while they worked their fancy jobs in Manhattan. I bit my tongue because that's what mothers do, right? We love. We forgive. We hope our kids will wake up one day and see us as more than a convenience. The illusion shattered the night of Jacob's 35th birthday. Tiffany had demanded a casual gathering for his colleagues. Casual, in her world, meant I'd spend 2 days cooking, scrubbing, arranging flowers, and pretending I didn't exist once the guests arrived. I made lasagna, roasted vegetables, garlic knots, and a chocolate cake the way Richard loved it, 3 layers, with rich ganache. By 6 o'clock, the house was glowing like a magazine spread. I'd even polished the silver Richard inherited from his grandmother. Guests began arriving in sleek black cars, men in tailored suits and women dripping in jewelry I couldn't imagine buying for myself. I stayed in the kitchen, invisible, listening to laughter and clinking glasses. Through the pass-through window, I watched Jacob command the room, telling stories of courtroom victories and business deals. He looked so much like his father, in those moments confident, charming, untouchable. My heart ached with pride and a pain I couldn't name. Around 8, an older gentleman wandered into the kitchen looking for the restroom. His hair was silver, his suit understated but expensive, and his voice carried that effortless authority that comes from a life of being listened to. "Excuse me," he said kindly. "Second door on the right?" I nodded, still plating appetizers. He lingered a moment, eyeing the spread. "This food is incredible. Did Tiffany make all this herself?" I looked up and met his gaze. He already knew the answer. "No," I said softly. "I did." He smiled, just a hint. "Thought so. I'm Robert Whitman, by the way." My hands froze. Jacob had mentioned him senior partner at the firm, the man whose approval could change his career. And here I was, apron on, smelling of garlic and soap. "Eleanor Hayes," I said, drying my hands. "Jacob's mother." "Ah," he said, eyes sharp now. "Well, Mrs. Hayes, you're very talented. Your son is lucky to have you." He left, but his words stayed with me like a spark in dry kindling. I didn't know yet that spark would burn my whole life into something new. The party went on, loud and glittering in rooms I had polished like a jewel. Tiffany took credit for every dish, every bouquet. Jacob laughed with his colleagues, the perfect host in the perfect house he didn't own. When the last guest left near midnight, I was still clearing glasses, while Tiffany slipped upstairs with a "So tired, thanks, Eleanor," and Jacob poured himself a scotch, like a king surveying his castle. That's when he said it. "Mom," he began casually, "Tiff and I have been talking. The boys are getting older and, well, We think it's time you found your own place. Something smaller. More your speed. My hand stilled on the crystal glass I was holding. My own place? I said quietly. Jacob, this is my house. He didn't flinch. Not really. Dad left it to me in the will. You've got a life estate, sure, but you don't have to use it. Honestly, it'd be better for everyone if you moved out. Start living your own life again. It was like a physical blow. After years of sacrifices, after raising him into the man he'd become, he was discarding me like I was an inconvenience. That night, lying awake in the dark, I felt something break. The soft, forgiving part of me died. In its place, something colder and sharper was born. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to take back my life and make them regret underestimating me. The next morning, the sun rose over the garden Richard and I had planted together, but everything felt different. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring at the roses just beginning to bloom deep red, like drops of blood against the green. I thought about the words Jacob had said to me the night before, and something inside me hardened. For 2 years, I had been the silent engine that kept this house running. I'd cooked, cleaned, babysat, and swallowed every insult, every little act of disrespect. I told myself it was temporary, that family meant sacrifice. But family, I realized, doesn't treat you like an inconvenience to be managed. Family doesn't conspire to push you out of your own home. That morning, I decided I wasn't going anywhere. If Jacob and Tiffany wanted me gone, they would learn just how wrong they were about who I really was. My first step was calling an old friend, Patricia Klein, the family attorney who had handled Richard's estate. "Eleanor," she said warmly when she answered, "how are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said, though my voice was tight. "Patricia, I need to ask you something about Richard's will. Jacob says the house is his now, that I only have a life estate, and that I should move out." There was a pause, and then Patricia's voice turned sharp. "He said that? Eleanor, he can't make you leave. A life estate means you have the right to live in that house for the rest of your life, no matter what he wants. He can't sell it. He can't evict you. He can't touch it until you're gone." Relief and anger mixed in my chest like oil and fire. "So he lied," I said quietly. "He's trying to scare me out." "Sounds like it," Patricia said. "If he pushes this further, call me. I'll handle it." I hung up and felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Richard died, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. I knew my son. I knew his weakness, Eshi's pride, his greed, his obsession with appearances. He wanted to rise in that law firm more than anything. He wanted the neighbors and his colleagues to see him as successful, sophisticated, untouchable. That was his world now, and I was going to turn it upside down. 3 days later, Tiffany announced another dinner party. This one was for important connections. Jacob wanted to impress smaller guest list, but more exclusive. "Cocktail hour, seated dinner, and dessert," Tiffany said briskly, scrolling on her phone while barely looking at me. "You know the drill, Eleanor. Oh, and maybe wear something neutral. I don't want people getting confused about the help and the host, you know." I smiled politely, but inside, I was ice. I spent the next 2 days transforming the house. I polished the silver, ironed the linens, and planned a menu that would make a 5-star chef proud. Beef tenderloin with rosemary potatoes, fresh garden salad, and a chocolate souffle that had to be timed down to the minute. The night of the party, the house gleamed. Candlelight flickered against crystal glasses, and the dining table looked like something out of Architectural Digest. I wore a black dress, simple but elegant, and pinned my hair in a chignon the way Richard always loved. I wasn't going to look like the help. I was going to look like the woman who owned this house, because I did. Guests began to arrive right on time. I recognized some faces from the previous party, including Robert Whitman. The senior partner, Jacob, was desperate to impress. He gave me a polite nod, and I returned it with a small smile. Tiffany floated around like she was queen of the evening, taking credit for everything I had done. Oh, the canapés? Just something I whipped up, she said, holding a tray of the appetizers I had spent 2 hours perfecting. I stayed calm, silent, observing. It was like watching actors perform a play on a stage I had built with my own hands. Then came the moment that would change everything. During cocktail hour, Robert wandered into the kitchen again, where I was finishing the last touches on the soufflé batter. He leaned against the doorframe, his sharp eyes on me. "Mrs. Hayes," he said quietly, "I just have to ask, are you by any chance the Eleanor Hayes who founded Hayes Morgan Consulting?" My breath caught. I hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in over a decade. Hayes Morgan had been my life's work. I started it in my 30s with a 10-0 loan and built it into one of the most respected management consulting firms in the Northeast. When I sold it 15 years ago, the deal was worth $28 million. Yes, I said carefully. That was me. A long time ago. His eyebrows lifted. Not that long ago. I remember the acquisition. Brilliant timing. And if I recall, the stock options alone must have doubled since then. I didn't confirm or deny, but he could see in my face that he was right. "So tell me," he said, lowering his voice, "why are you in here plating canapés while your son and his wife play host?" My lips curved into a small, cold smile. "Let's just say, appearances can be deceiving." His eyes glimmered with understanding. He gave a slow nod and walked back into the living room, leaving me with my thoughts and the first taste of the vindication I had been craving. Dinner began at 7 sharp. I carried out the beef tenderloin, the roasted vegetables, the fresh bread I had baked myself. Tiffany played the gracious hostess, laughing too loudly, dropping names, making sure everyone saw her diamond earrings catch the candlelight. Jacob soaked up the attention, bragging about cases he'd won and future promotions. I watched quietly, invisible but listening to every word. Then, as I refilled a wine glass, I heard Tiffany's voice, sweet and poisonous. "Oh, Eleanor just loves living here with us. We took her in after Richard passed. She didn't really have anywhere else to go, so of course we gave her a home. Family takes care of family, right?" The words were sugar-coated venom, and they hit me like a slap. My hands shook for just a second, but I caught myself. I didn't respond. Not yet. I went back to the kitchen to prepare the soufflé, my mind already moving 3 steps ahead. They thought they were in control. They thought I was powerless. But they had just handed me everything I needed to destroy the little empire they'd built on my back. The soufflé rose perfectly, golden and delicate, as the voices in the dining room swirled through the air like perfume laced with poison. I could hear laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, the hollow pride in Tiffany's voice as she claimed credit for things she'd never done. My hands were steady, but inside me, something hard and sharp had taken root. By the time I walked back into the dining room, carrying the dessert, I was ready. I served each guest with the same polite smile, and the compliments started immediately. "This is incredible," one of the partners' wives said. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "Oh, Eleanor just has so much time on her hands," Tiffany chimed in before I could answer, her voice dripping with false charm. "She loves keeping busy. Cooking, cleaning, gardening. She's like our live-in helper, really." A few polite laughs followed, but I saw the subtle shifts in the room. Eyes flicking to Jacob. Glances exchanged. Even wealthy, self-absorbed people can recognize cruelty when it's laid bare. Robert Whitman set his spoon down carefully and looked around the table, his voice smooth but carrying authority. "Helper, is it? Interesting. You know, it's funny. I used to read a lot of business profiles. The name Eleanor Hayes sounded familiar to me. And now I know why." The table went silent. Jacob froze, mid-laugh. Tiffany's smile stiffened, like sugar snapping under heat. "Your mother," Robert continued, turning to Jacob, "founded Hayes, Morgan Consulting, one of the most successful boutique firms in the region. She built it from nothing and sold it for what, around $28 million? And that's not counting the stock options. which must be worth considerably more by now. Forks clattered against plates. One of the partners actually choked on his wine. Tiffany went pale, then flushed red, while Jacob's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I mean, Mom had a little consulting thing, yeah, Jacob stammered, his voice cracking. But that was years ago. Mostly paperwork, you know. Small stuff. Nothing major. Robert's eyebrow lifted. Small stuff? She created 2 proprietary software systems that Fortune 500 companies still use. She was featured in Forbes. I remember the article, "The Woman Who Outsmarted Wall Street." Every head turned toward me. For the first time in years, I didn't shrink. I didn't look away. I simply placed the last dish on the table and said, in the calmest voice I had, "People remember what they choose to remember." Jacob was sweating now, his carefully built image crumbling in front of his mentors. "Mom, I didn't," he started, but Robert cut him off, his voice like a blade. "Jacob, I think you might want to reconsider how you describe your mother. Because the way I see it, she's the most impressive person in this room." That was the first real strike, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. I cleared the plates after dessert, leaving the table buzzing with whispers. Tiffany tried to recover with shallow small talk, but the energy had shifted completely. I could feel the weight of the guest's judgment pressing down on my son and his wife, and I savored it quietly. When the last guest finally left, the house fell into a heavy silence. Tiffany disappeared upstairs without a word, but Jacob lingered in the living room, staring into his glass of scotch like it could give him answers. "Mom," he said finally, his voice tight. "You could have said something. You didn't have to." I cut him off with a level stare. "I didn't have to what, Jacob? Lie for you? Pretend I'm a servant in my own house? Pretend I don't know what you've been saying about me to your colleagues, to your kids?" His face flushed with guilt and anger. People wouldn't understand, okay? It's complicated. I didn't want anyone to think I was." He trailed off, and I finished the sentence for him. "Living off your mother. Taking advantage of her. Treating her like hired help." He flinched like I had struck him. "It's not like that," he muttered. "Then tell me how it is, Jacob. Explain to me how telling your children that their grandmother is basically a charity case is anything other than cruel." He had no answer. He just stared at the floor, his jaw tight, his fingers white around the glass. In that moment, I saw him for exactly what he had become, a man, so consumed by his own image and ambition that he was willing to step on the very person who had given him everything. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my plan crystallized. I wasn't just going to reclaim my home. I was going to reclaim my dignity, my peace, and the life they had tried to steal from me. And I was going to make sure Jacob and Tiffany learned a lesson they would never forget. Over the next few days, I became quieter, calmer, almost invisible. I cooked. I cleaned. I babysat. But behind every polite nod and soft smile, I was gathering information, watching, calculating. I noted every bill that came through the mail, every careless credit card receipt Tiffany left on the counter, every luxury purchase that didn't match their claimed salaries. They thought I was harmless. They thought I was weak. And that was the greatest advantage I could have asked for. Because when the moment came, I was going to burn their perfect little world down to the ground, and they wouldn't even see the match in my hand. It started with a phone call to my financial advisor. I told her I wanted full reports on all shared accounts, every credit card, every line of credit that Jacob or Tiffany had access to. She hesitated. "Are you preparing to take action?" she asked gently. "I'm preparing to protect myself," I replied. Then I called Patricia, the lawyer. "I need a formal letter stating my rights to the house, including the terms of the life estate, and I want it notarized," I said. "Send a copy to me and a copy to Jacob, certified." Patricia didn't ask questions. She'd known Richard, and she knew me well enough to understand that when I stopped crying, it meant I was getting ready to fight. A week later, the documents arrived. I placed Jacob's copy carefully on the dining room table with a yellow post-it that simply read, "We'll talk after dinner." That evening, Tiffany floated downstairs dressed for a ladies' night dinner in the City Heels. Designer clutch, fresh blowout. She didn't even glance at me. "Don't forget Levi's inhaler," she said as she breezed out the door. I nodded, as if I were the nanny. When Jacob came home, he looked tired and irritated. "What's this?" he asked, picking up the envelope. "Legal documents," I said evenly. "Confirming that this is still my house, that you don't own it, that you can't sell it, and that you can't force me to leave." He left a short, ugly sound. "Jesus, Mom, is that really necessary? You made it necessary the night you tried to push me out of my own home," I said. "The night you told me to get back out there and start living my life. So I am. Starting now." He opened the envelope, skimmed the letter, and his face lost color. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're seriously going to hide behind a lawyer now?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to protect myself with one." He dropped the paper like it burned him. "Do you really want to start a war, Mom?" "You already started it," I said, turning away. That night I couldn't sleep, but it wasn't from fear. It was something else. Liberation. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't drowning in silence. I was standing on solid ground again. And the more I thought about what they'd done, the lies, the manipulation, the casual cruelty, more I realized I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to feel everything I had felt. The exhaustion, the invisibility, the humiliation. The next move was financial. I had already closed the joint emergency fund they used as their personal ATM. Tiffany had been withdrawing hundreds at a time for household expenses that somehow included spa treatments and high-end handbags. I opened a new account under my name only and rerouted all bill payments. When Tiffany tried to schedule a massage the next day and her card was declined, she didn't say anything. But I saw her checking her phone repeatedly, frowning at her screen like it had betrayed her. Good. Let it begin. A few days later, I hired a private investigator. I didn't want dirt. I wanted precision. Every receipt, every misuse of my money, every lie they'd ever told to gain access to what I'd worked for. The report arrived in less than a week. 32 pages. Itemized, time-stamped, damning. Nearly 48. Zero spent in less than 8 months. Most of it, luxuries. None of it mine. My hands didn't shake as I read. They were steady, cold, focused. I made a copy and placed it in a new envelope, addressed to Jacob and Tiffany. On the front, I wrote, "We'll talk on Sunday. No kids." When Sunday arrived, the twins were sent to a playdate. Tiffany looked nervous. Jacob looked furious. I poured myself coffee and sat across from them at the dining table, the same table where they had thrown dinner parties pretending I didn't exist. "What is this, Eleanor?" Tiffany asked, already defensive. "This," I said, sliding the envelope across the table, "is everything you've spent using accounts tied to my name, and everything I can prove in court." Jacob opened the folder. As he flipped through the pages, his face turned the color of old ash. "You've been spying on us?" "I've been protecting myself," I corrected. "You see, I co-signed those credit cards under the condition they were for emergency use only. You've committed fraud." Tiffany's voice went shrill. "That's absurd. You gave us those cards. You knew we were using them." "I knew you were lying," I said. "I just didn't care until now." Jacob stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. "You can't do this. You wouldn't. Not to your own son." I stood too. "You stopped being my son the day you tried to erase me. The day you tried to turn my home into your status symbol. The day you lied to my face and told your children I was a burden." Tiffany's eyes welled with tears, but I didn't care. I had no room left for guilt. "You have 30 days, I said quietly, "to leave, to pack up your things, to find somewhere else to play house. And if you don't," I paused, letting the silence do the work. "Then I pursue full legal action. Fraud, financial misconduct, public exposure. You'd destroy us, Jacob whispered. No, I said. You already destroyed yourselves. I'm just refusing to go down with you. I left them sitting there, broken and stunned. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply walked upstairs, closed the door to my bedroom, and locked it. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. The next morning, the house was silent. No laughter from the twins, no Tiffany chattering on the phone, no Jacob humming in the shower like he owned the place. They were in shock, moving through the house like ghosts. I drank my coffee in peace, savoring every sip, and listened to the clock tick in the quiet. For weeks, I had been planning this moment, and now the power was entirely in my hands. Over the next few days, they began to pack. I watched them carry boxes down the same stairs where Tiffany had once clicked past me in designer heels like I didn't exist. She avoided my eyes now, her face pale, lips pressed tight. Jacob tried one last time to negotiate. "Mom," he said one night, standing in the doorway of the living room where I sat with my book. "If we apologize, if we make this right, could we stay?" I didn't even look up. "Some things," I said softly, "cannot be undone." He stood there a moment longer, then turned away. By the end of the month, a moving truck was in the driveway. The boys hugged me without understanding why they were leaving, the only home they remembered, and I hugged them back, feeling nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just the cold satisfaction of a woman who had finally claimed the justice she deserved. I watched the truck drive away, the taillights disappearing down the long tree-lined road. For the first time in years, the house was mine again, not just legally, but spiritually. The air felt lighter. The walls seemed to exhale. My life was my own. A week later, the consequences of that infamous dinner party reached full bloom. Robert Whitman called me personally. "Eleanor," he said warmly, "I just wanted to tell you, I've never seen a man destroy his own reputation so quickly. Every partner knows exactly what happened. And let me just say good for you." I chuckled quietly. "Thank you, Robert. I didn't need your approval, but I appreciate it." The story spread beyond the firm, as things like this always do. Neighbors who used to nod politely now waved with open respect. Women who had whispered behind Tiffany's back suddenly wanted to invite me to luncheons and charity galas. I accepted none of them. I had no interest in their shallow approval. I had my house, my peace, and a lesson carved into my heart. Kindness without boundaries invites wolves into your home. Months passed. Jacob and Tiffany moved into a cramped apartment across the county line. He lost his job at the firm, and no other firm would touch him. The legal world is small, and the story had traveled far. Tiffany picked up part-time work at a boutique to keep the lights on. They sent me letters, please, excuses, half-hearted apologies. I didn't respond. I didn't block their numbers completely, but I let every call go to voicemail. They needed to feel the weight of the silence they had once forced on me. One afternoon in early spring, I walked through my garden, the roses blooming like little drops of fire in the sunlight. I thought about Richard, about the life we built, and about the child we raised who chose greed over love. I didn't feel guilt. I felt free, free of the weight of false loyalty, free of the constant ache of being unseen, free of the lie that family bonds are unbreakable no matter how much they're abused. I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, looking out over the driveway where the moving truck had once taken them away. In that stillness, I finally allowed myself to smile, not a bitter smile, but a satisfied one. I had protected my home, my dignity, and my future. And I had shown Jacob and Tiffany the one truth they had never understood. Actions have consequences. Mistake kindness for weakness, and eventually, you'll meet the storm you created. That night, I locked my bedroom door the way I had on the first night of my new life, and slept like a queen in her rightful castle. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from the courts or from the heavens. Sometimes, It comes from a mother who refuses to be erased, and that mother was me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of my story. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, it helps more than you know.